Currently the historian for the Kappa Phi Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It is my pleasure this evening to interview Brother Richard Shepard, and assisting me during this interview will be my deputy, Brother Anthony Brown. Brother Shepard, Brother Brown, how are you both doing this evening?
Doing great.
Brother Shepard, really excited to learn more about your story. Tell us, where are you from and where'd you go to college?
I am born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and I attended Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio, graduating in the class of 1971.
Okay, great. So why Wilberforce? I'm sorry, why Central States of all possible places to go to college?
Well, it kind of happened haphazardly. I was not planning on going to Central State University. I actually had 5 scholarships to play football at various institutions, and I had decided on Fisk. And as things happened, I got somewhat tired of filling out all the paperwork and everything else, and decided I wasn't going to go to college at all, that I would just go to the Air Force and follow in my big brother's footsteps and do that. But a friend of mine from high school happened to ask me when I was leaving for Fisk, and I told him I wasn't going, and he said, well, don't go to the Air Force. Why don't you come and go to Central State with me? And as a result of that, that was 2 weeks before class started.
Oh, wow.
I sent the application in, they accepted me. I wound up at Central State University, and it turned out to be the best decision I ever made.
That's amazing. I tell you, serendipity is a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Brother Shepard,
I hadn't even heard of the university, and my friend was telling me, he said, well, you remember the guy from the YMCA that we used to have? He said he went to Central State University, and I'm going, and we may as well go together, because we did everything together in high school. We wound up doing everything together at Central State University.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how far is it from Cleveland?
3.5 hours.
Okay, so it's pretty far away. Okay, got it. Okay, very good.
No, it's close.
Brother Shepard, I heard you mention Fisk, and then you ended up at Central State. So was a HBCU kind of always on your radar where you wanted to go?
No, because two of the other universities were Worcester College and Case Western Reserve.
Okay.
And they were both offering me scholarships to play football.
Right. Did you play at Central States?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I did not. You make decisions early on. Sometimes you're thankful that you made them. Sometimes that you're not.
Sure.
But in this case, I'm glad I didn't play at the university, and it worked out better for me to concentrate on my academics and other things. So, and as it turns out, if you guys know me, I'm not that big of a guy.
Well, you have the height.
I was smaller then, in terms of weight, and so it just didn't seem. It seemed like it was going to be that true for me to be out there as everybody else was getting larger and larger and larger, and and faster and everything else. It was better for me to stay on the intramural side and win those championships instead.
Sure, and keep all your limbs together.
Not worry too much about it.
Yep, indeed. Okay, good. So tell us about your decision to become a member of our beloved fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha.
It's another interesting story, because that wasn't my first choice. Because when you're in college and you're caught up in the hype of everything, you're usually looking at what's the most popular, what gets the most attention. And on our campus back in 1967, the Qs were the most popular, and they got the most attention, and of course the most ladies. And the Alphas was somewhat low key, very low key. But my freshman year, my grades were not that great. So I decided I would wait another year. And I wound up rooming with my high school friend that got me to come to Central State, who had already pledged Alpha. And within that year of being was brainwashed and educated,
indoctrinated,
as the difference between an alpha man and anybody else. And then I began to do some research about it, and I noticed that all of the leadership positions on the campus were held by alpha men. Okay? They were in charge of everything. Even though it was low key, it was kind of leading, and everybody knew it. And when you take a look, started looking at the academics, and we had a thing on our campus where they used to call it the Goon Squad. Okay. And they would post people's grade point averages on the wall.
Okay.
And then you come to the cafeteria and you can see who was doing well and who was not. At the top of that list was alpha men all the time in terms of GPAs. And on the other side was everybody else. So as I decided for a long-term commitment, where I really wanted to be, and the kind of individuals I wanted to be with, and the kind of individuals I wanted to be like, it led me to Alpha, which was then the second best decision I made.
Okay.
I wound up at Central State University, and I wound up becoming an Alpha. Those two things, for practically everything in my life, lead back to those two things.
That's pretty amazing.
Brother Shepherd, why don't you call the name of that friend who led you both to Alpha and to Central State?
His name was Roosevelt Adams.
Roosevelt Adams.
Yes.
You're still in touch with him? Is he still living?
No, unfortunately, we had been best friends for life. Unfortunately, he died about 6-7 years ago.
Okay, well, we get to call his name, Roosevelt Adams.
So of course, he was living in Atlanta at the time, so we went down for the Atlanta scenario for his funeral and everything. And it was interesting because his wife was a Kent State graduate. And she was talking to my wife, and she was saying that she was going to have this small repast for him after the service. And she says, no, you can't have a small repast because the Centralians are going to show up.
Awesome.
And this was a huge church, and the Central State alums filled the one half of that whole church.
That's wonderful.
Came from everywhere across the country to attend that service. And she had to redo that whole thing. That's what she was thinking about, because the repast had to be 5-10 times as large as she was ever thinking about.
Well, we were.
That's the bond. That's the bond among Centralians.
Sure, that's
and
wonderful.
We remember our brother Roosevelt Adams, a member of the Omega chapter. Hey, so we mentioned our brother Adams. Do you have any other family members who are or were members of Alpha Phi Alpha?
No, I do not.
Okay.
No.
And let me ask this question. What about any family members who are Greek? Do you have other Greeks?
I have one cousin who is actually my mother's first cousin, but because she's closer in age to my brother and me, it would seem like she would be our first cousin, but she's not, and she's a Delta.
She's a Delta, and
now my wife is an AKA.
I was going to ask you that question. Yes,
but my cousin, if you're just looking at my outside family members, not my immediate family here, I think just my cousin Judy is the Delta.
That's good. And did your wife, was she initiated at Central State also in AKA?
No, she was not. She went over in the grad chapter 2 years after we graduated in East Chicago, Indiana, which is her hometown.
Great. Hey, you referenced it was your
and she just got her 50-year pin a couple of days ago.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Hey, you mentioned it was your sophomore year, I believe, your sophomore year when you were initiated. So help us out.
No.
In what year?
No, it was not.
Help clarify. Let me ask you this question.
Back then,
okay.
The pledge period started in your sophomore. It started in the spring. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
And you pledged 8 to 10 weeks in the spring, and then you came back and you pledged 8 to 10 weeks in the fall.
Okay.
So by the time I came back, I was a junior. So I went over in my junior year.
Help us out with some dates. What year, and just help us with the name of that chapter that we.
The chapter is Delta Z, known as the infamous Delta Z.
Okay.
And we went over November 21st, 1969.
November 21st, 1969. Thanks so
Right.
much. Hey, so can you share and some of your best memories as a college brother?
As a college brother?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Like I said earlier, one of the things that really stood out for me was the fact that we were building leaders. And by the time I graduated, there were the freshman class president was online. The sophomore class president was an alpha. The junior class president, senior class president, the student government was the president. Panhel, the president of that organization, was a Delta Z brother. All right. We had the mentoring programs. We just had everything. So when it came down to building leaders and running the campus, that's what we were all about. And then secondly, what was so important to me is that, like I said before, there were very few alphas on the campus when I got there. And they were all really low key. High academic guys, but very low key. By the time I graduated, we had 57 active brothers on campus.
Wow.
Ran everything, and we had a cumulative GPA of about 3.4
Wow.
for the 57 brothers.
Impressive.
57.
So that always meant a lot to me, especially because when you look at the motto, first of all, you know, servants of all, we shall transcend all. That really was what we kind of tried to portray. We were first in everything. Okay? We had service projects all over the place, and we just transcended everybody. We just...
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, Brother Shepherd, so if we move beyond college, what did you do professionally after leaving college? And if are you retired now? How do you spend your time now? But what did you do after college? What was your career professionally?
Well, that's a long story because I didn't just do one thing. Because
yes, sir. Okay.
I would say 85% of my work life has been entrepreneurial.
Okay.
I've been working for myself most all of that time. However, when I first got out of school, I had been looking for something that I thought would be worthy of this great education I had received at Central State University. And I really couldn't find what I was looking for. So bottom line is, after interviewing with places like Social Security Administration and all of those places and realizing that they didn't pay very well for the things that I felt like I was entitled to, I wound up going back to a company I worked for in the summer. And that was a company called Caroline International. And it was a sales company. And I had started in the sales business at 20 years old. We were selling cookware, china, crystal, cutlery, things along those lines. We were selling them in the home, you know, and our market was single working women between the age of 18 and 27. Best job I ever had.
Yeah, you sound like you have your sales spiel like right in the back of your pocket.
I could do the presentation right now. If I wanted to, and I've done it many a times. You know, people come over and I've cooked a meal and they want to know how did I do it, and I just pull the pans out and show them, because the pans were guaranteed for life. My pans are 50 plus years old, and if I put them on the stove, you think I just bought them. Well, it's a great product, But nonetheless, when I could not find what my parents called a good job, and I could have taken any of those good jobs, but they just didn't pay, because that summer that I worked starting out selling pans, I made more money in 2.5 months than they were offering me in salary in a year. So I went right back to that company and started where I left off and was killing it. Before I knew it, I had I was managing 2 offices and I had 25 people selling for me.
Hmm.
Right. And by then I probably was 23, 24,
Hmm.
something like that. Within 2 years after that, I wound up owning the company. So
Wow.
it was an exciting time for me, and
Mm-hmm.
it was wonderful. And the same principles that I learned back then, I'm now charging people crazy money for me to teach them that today.
Hmm.
Yes. That's
Nice.
great.
Okay. So, but from that, just to show you where that could lead you, I took a position with automatic data processing in their
Hmm.
dealer services division. And from that sales training there, going to that organization, well, I'll skip one. I took a job with a company called AB Dick. They sold office equipment,
Mm-hmm.
mimeograph machines, printing presses, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to give me an opportunity because they say I had never done quote unquote professional sales.
Hmm.
Because they didn't think that someone who sold in the home could go see a professional and do the same thing. So I asked the guy a question in the interview because he was trying to put me down. I asked him in the interview, I said, so these professional people, where do you think they go after 5 o'clock?
Hmm.
If they go home. I said,
Mm-hmm.
then that's where I meet those people. The same people you deal with between 8 and 5, I deal with between 6 and 10.
Hmm.
So you give me an opportunity and I'll run circles around anybody you got here.
Wow. Well,
Okay. And that's exactly what happened. I became the #1 salesman in the country for that company within a year.
Hmm.
Okay. Then I left there and I went to the phone company, same situation. Then I went to started my own business in Pittsburgh with another frat brother, line brother of mine. We started a company called International Payment Services.
Hmm.
And that is the predecessor to what we know today as online banking.
Hmm.
So we came up with that concept in 1971. At that time, we called it pay by phone because the
Hmm.
computers weren't all that advanced,
Mm-hmm.
but you needed to have a computer on the back end to accept the digital tones off the phone. So,
Mm-hmm.
remember, we all had almost just got the touch tone at that time.
Mm-hmm.
We had rotary dials prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
So we started that organization and we started trying to expand and go to the banks and raise money and everything else. They all shot us down. Nobody would lend us money. And of course, we're naive and not really knowing why they're not doing it. But we know now that they just
Mm-hmm.
weren't going to give us that opportunity to make that cash. And 2 years later, we're walking down the street downtown Pittsburgh and see a sign in the window for Mellon Bank, online banking now available.
Hmm.
You know, so we just lost that altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of folding up, we started an accounting firm, a racking and shelving company, and a data processing firm. And so we were able to manage our way through all of that. He wound up going to work for a company called the Hubline Corporation, who owned Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Hmm. Okay.
And through that arrangement, he wound up owning a couple of Kentucky Fried Chicken stores in Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina, I think it is.
Okay.
As soon as you come out of Virginia, you run into this little town called Roanoke Rapids. On the other hand, when we finally shut the company down, I went to work for the dealer services division of ADP. And through that, I became like the #1 salesman in the country for them, selling computer systems to automobile dealers.
Hmm.
That is how the migration went from me serving as a consultant to the auto industry to owning my own automobile dealership here in Columbia.
Hmm.
So I built a dealership from scratch over on McGaw Road that sold Pontiac, Buick, and GMC,
wow.
all from pots and pans.
That's amazing. It's an incredible story. Yeah.
Is that what you retired from? Did you retire from that dealership? What did you retire from?
No, because actually I sold that dealership back to General Motors in 2001, I think, something like that. Before that, I opened with another friend of mine. We started a company called DMV Network. I don't know if you purchased a vehicle anytime in the recently or in the last 10 years or so. But, you don't get temporary tags anymore when you buy a car. They put the metal plates on your car and give you the registration right on the spot. Okay. We started that company in 1992. All right. And we got it going in 8 states. And then we sold that company and moved on to something else. So the progression was auto dealership. No, progression was DMV network, from ADP to DMV network, back into the auto business as an owner. I attended General Motors Dealer Development Academy and graduated from there. And then I was fortunate enough to convince General Motors to let me build my own store right here in Columbia, because typically they want you to buy someone else's. And they usually have bad reputations. They have all kinds of things go wrong with them, and they want you to buy them and turn them around. And I really didn't want to do that. And I had the resources from all the other things I had been doing to build one here. So I built that one and then sold it back to General Motors in 2001-ish. And then I started a business sales and business management consulting firm. And
Alpha man is a thinking man, right?
That is what I retired from, to answer the question directly. That was the last official job that I had, but it was working for myself as a business consultant. And that is how I ran into Adrian Harpool. I think Adrian was my second client. As when I became a business consultant, I started doing work for his company. He was the second person that hired me.
Now you went to it's Adrian Harpool. I know Adrian Harpool. I do know him. Should I know him from his relationship with Alpha Phi Alpha, or should I just know him?
No, he's not an alpha. He was at the breakfast.
Yes, you referenced, yes. Oh, okay, yeah, so that's the connection. Yes,
but he had a company called 21st Century Group.
All right, sounds good.
And they heard me speaking at a seminar that Brother Lou Hutt sponsored, because he has a seminar that he used to run called Mega Success Seminars. And these companies would come from all over, and Lou would call me and have me do the piece on marketing. And after I finished doing my piece on marketing, people would come out of the audience and say, "Hey, I need help with my company. Can you come and help me?"
How do you spend your retirement? How do you spend retirement?
Mostly doing volunteer work.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool.
Because I'm involved with the National Alumni Association for Central State.
Yes.
I'm serving as the treasurer of the NAACP, treasurer of the Alpha Foundation of Howard County, treasurer of Equity Matters. And then, of course, I serve as a deacon at our church, and I'm the president of the male chorus at our church.
Wow.
So I'm busy.
You
all
are
the
incredibly
time.
busy.
You said you sound busy. I think Brother Montgomery wants to talk to you about our chapter, how you got to the Howard County chapter.
Yeah. You touched on it a bit, Brother Shepherd. You mentioned that you decided to build a car dealership, a General Motors dealership here in Columbia. So, what was the attraction to Columbia?
Well, that's not why. Well, how I wound up in Columbia, that's really the basis of the question.
Right.
Okay. I was living in New Jersey, in South Orange, New Jersey. One of my Delta Z brothers lived in this area. His name was Daryl Kofi Kennett. He was in Baltimore. He came to visit me in New Jersey. And I was telling him that I was being promoted to Maryland by the Dealer Services Division of ADP to take over a 5-state region.
Okay.
And turn this region around. He said, "Well, if you're going to move up here, you should consider this town called Columbia." And I said, "Okay." So he came back to see me again, and this time with him is Brother James Wilson.
Okay. Wow.
James Wilson was a realtor at that time.
Okay.
So we said, okay, we'll use James to find us a house.
Mm-hmm.
And James found me this house right here.
That's great. And what year was that you
I've been
came here?
here ever since.
Yeah. And what year did you come to Columbia then?
85.
85. Okay. And obviously, Brother Wilson, who's now unfortunately in the Omega chapter, was he then the connection to Kappa Phi Lambda?
Yes, he was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He told me about Kappa Phi Lambda, told me when the meetings were and everything, and he basically picked me up and took me over there.
Okay.
Okay.
That's awesome.
And now I've been an active member with Kappa Phi Lambda since 85.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That is really wonderful.
And I've only had 2 years, maybe, of inactivity since 69.
That's wonderful.
That's wonderful. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
I try to stay active everywhere I went.
obviously, and being a serial entrepreneur is pretty incredible. You touched on it, but we wanted to ask you to spend a bit more time telling us about your civic and your philanthropic efforts, especially involving Central State, because I know that's been a big part of your life. But we just wanted to ask you to tell us more about those activities.
Okay, from the work that I do at Central State University is like a life of service with them. From the time we found out that alums were supposed to give back to the universities, my wife and I have been doing that ever since 1975, maybe 73, that we've made a contribution to Central State University every year. It is top line in our budget. And I have said on numerous occasions and I mean this particularly to individuals who have graduated from HBCUs. If you are an HBCU graduate and you are not contributing to the well-being of that university financially, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should just be ashamed. We should make you pledge again. Back in the days when pledging, you got your socks warmed when you were pledging. Okay? But I'm saying it just doesn't make sense to me because, like I said, when I look back at all the things I've been able to accomplish, it all leads back to Central State University, Delta Z chapter. Always, I can count it back. On my screensaver, pictures come up all the time because that's what's on my screensaver. It's just pictures. And I would say that 85% of those pictures on there, if I look at it, I can point to something that's Central State or Alpha.
That's great. Now you've done more than just make contributions. You've brag for a minute.
Like I said,
you've been a leading philanthropist at Central State. Just wanted just ask you to tell us a bit more about what you've been able to do.
Okay. Well, the first thing is that being that both my wife and I are first generation graduates from college, we decided that we wanted to create a scholarship endowment fund that would support first generation college students. So we started on this plan years ago, and our goal was to get enough money in the endowment that we could give scholarships to students every year off the interest that it earns.
That's wonderful.
And never have to give anything out of the principal. So we got it up to the level that we wanted it to get to, and then we started giving out the scholarships, and we've been doing it now for over 10 straight years.
That's wonderful.
Giving scholarships out of the endowment account that we have there. The second thing we've done is we used to run the Baltimore chapter of the Alumni Association. And we did that for nine straight years. In the time that we had it, we were the largest contributing chapter to the university every year.
That's awesome.
Then we started working on the Alumni Board of Directors. So I have served as treasurer of the board. My wife has served as treasurer of the board. And between the two of us, we have gotten the board to be self-sustaining, and they now have enough cash to do everything they need to do, plus endow their money and so on, because we've taken them through the entire process on how to do that. Then we started working on our classes. Well, we both are the class of 71, but we started working on our classmates to get them in the frame of mind to start giving to the university. So we started running campaigns at every one of our reunions. So every 5 years, we have another situation where we're a class in reunion. And so we would give our classmates a goal of how much we wanted to raise, and then we would raise it and raise it and raise it and raise it. So for our 50th, we embarked on a major campaign where we told the class we wanted the class to give $200,000. And we finished with 329,000.
That's incredible.
So
how many people in there? How many people?
How many people in class?
Yes, or participated in the campaign?
I think we had about 120 donors.
120 donors.
About 120 donors. Yeah, but we were on them, man. We stayed on them, and we started a campaign, and we ran it all from our house with no assistance from the university.
Wow.
Because the university is always crying about their low on resources and everything else, and we just said, if you want to do this, it can be done. So we just kind of kept going, saying, watch us.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Just do it. And then we presented the check for $329,000.
That's truly amazing.
And even now, I understand you're traveling the country.
Yeah, like I said, well, a couple of key things that happened. One, just from our personal giving, we qualified for naming rights. Okay. And as a result of how much we had done, the university named a street after us.
Oh, that's amazing.
So
congratulations.
We have a street now called Kennedy Shepherd Drive. My wife's maiden name is Kennedy. I'm Shepherd, of course. So both families are represented on the campus. Kennedy Shepherd Drive. And you can hardly go, I mean, it's not a huge campus. You know, on a good year, we got 2,500 students, maybe 3,000. Okay. But you can't hardly go anywhere on that campus without crossing our street.
That's nice. That
if
is
you go into Robinson Hall, you're going to cross that street. If you go into you going to lunch or dinner, you're going to cross that street.
That's nice. That is really wonderful stuff. You mentioned as well.
The second thing is they called us and asked us to serve as ambassadors, and we went under contract with them for that, starting in December.
That's great. Really wonderful stuff. You had touched on it. We wanted to just get a little bit more too. You've been involved with the Alpha Phi Alpha Foundation as well. I just want to talk more about some of the work you've done with within Kappa Phi Lambda. You mentioned you've been active since '85. Just want to hear a bit more about some of the things you've done.
Well, from a chapter perspective, offices I've had, secretary, financial secretary, treasurer, MLK chair, education committee. I mean, I'm always doing something.
Sure.
You know, I can't remember how many administrations I served under Kemp, Raphael, Fitzpatrick. I don't know. I feel like I was on Harold Payne, one of Harold Payne's runs. I don't know. I think I've just been there.
And right now you're currently on the foundation board, correct?
Right. I started on the foundation board, and immediately when I got on, I became the secretary.
Okay.
And I did that for maybe 5 years or so. And then we realized that the foundation's books were not in the best condition. And so I took that over from Brother Sands. Brother Sands was the treasurer for a while. And so he and I were talking about it. It was so funny. That's the coolest dude. Freeman Sands. We were talking, and he said, Rich, I think I might be out of my element. I think I might be out of my element. Would you look at this with me? Look at this with me. So we started working together, and eventually I wound up being the treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brother Chambers decided that he would take it for a while from me, right? Because I had been doing it for a good 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then shortly after he decided he would do it, he moved to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So because nobody else was there, I became the treasurer again. And so now I'm officially the treasurer again. So I could be 10 years in.
Mm.
Oh, that's
Great.
Now you mentioned the interaction with Freeman Sands. We appreciate that. Lewis's father-in-law and resting in the Omega chapter. That's a memory. Do you have any other memories? So some of your strongest memories as a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. We asked you about your college years, even as a part of Kappa Phi Lambda. Any memories come to your mind?
Well, there's so many. And like I said, I've been in this chapter
Share a couple with them. Share a couple of them with them.
Years, but some of the things that just stood out to me are the things that the chapter does.
Okay.
Right. For example, the program that we had where every Christmas we went to this senior center and they passed out gifts to the seniors. And it was a place where they rarely probably got any visitors or anything like that. But just to have that kind of commitment to the community to do that kind of thing. And that was impressive to me.
Sure.
That the guys would take the time to do that. The second thing to me for Kappa Phi Lambda chapter, outside of the fact that for years it was always ranked as one of the top chapters in the country, is the mass amount of really, really talented brothers who are in this chapter. Guys who epitomized what Alpha was supposed to be. I got a chance to meet and work with a lot of those guys. Guys like Ed Young, life member 413. Because when he introduced himself, that's what he would say. Ed Young, life member 413. Or Cecil Christian, or Freeman Sands. When I joined the chapter, Freeman was the president.
Okay.
Yeah. I had just joined the chapter. Freeman was the president, and we were at a Martin Luther King breakfast, and was held at Turf Valley. Right? And so I think Brother Barrett was the chair. How they knew this, I really don't know. But I'm sitting there, I've got my guests and everything, and my two little kids sitting around the table. And there was supposed to be this guy named Whitley Phelps, or Phipps, singing, right?
Christian singer. Yeah, remember him.
Was supposed to be the entertainment. He didn't post. So I'm sitting there trying to eat my eggs, and I get a tap on the shoulder, and it's Brother Barrett. And he said, "Hey, this guy ain't going to show up, so you guys fill in for him." I said, I got to fill in for him. He said, "Yeah, well, you got to go." Now, I don't think I ever sang anything in front of Brother Barrett before, or whatever. How they even got the idea, unless James or Harry told them or something like that, to go get him. But they said, "Go up there and there's a piano man up there, pick something, do something."
Oh my gosh.
That's a good memory. That's a memory.
And Freeman's up there at the podium now. I'm done, and I'm going back to my seat and everything. And Freeman said something like, "That's the thing about an alpha man. He always got a plan B."
That's great. That is
We
wonderful.
always got a plan B. You know, one monkey don't stop this show. We're gonna keep on.
Yeah,
You know.
indeed. That's great. One last question, Brother Shepherd. As you know, our fraternity was the first Black Greek letter organization founded in 1906, more than a century ago. Why do you think Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is still so relevant today?
And to me, it's pretty clear. It's relevant in a number of ways. One, again, when you look at leadership, it's evident almost everywhere you go. And we used to say, unashamedly, nearly everybody who's anybody is an alpha man. And that turns out to be true all the time. So much so that that's what I expect. When I run into somebody anywhere and they give me the sign, or I give it to them, or I challenge them, or whatever, I expect them to be at the top of their craft, the leader in their field, okay? Directing and improving the lives of other people. I just expect that to happen. And so as an alpha man, to me, if you haven't done enough, that somebody will walk up to you and tell you how you changed their life for the better, you need to check yourself. Because that's what you're doing when you are transcending all, when you are serving all, and you're first of all. That's what you do. If you're not doing that, get your history book out and understand what you said you were going to be about. And another reason why I think it's relevant is because another fella from Delta Z, we called him Smokey. His name was William Robinson, so that's why we called him Smokey. He couldn't sing or nothing like that.
Sure.
We called him Smokey. But he said something. We were standing out in the parking lot one day, and he said, "You don't understand, brothers. This is not something you do just while you're in college. This is an organization you join for life."
Well said.
And I think there are enough of us who feel that same way that keeps the fraternity relevant. There are significant numbers on the other side who we never see, we never hear from, until it's time to put your colors on and run out and see if you can still step. Okay, then they're the greatest alphas in the world. But it's like I told one of my line brothers, he lives in PG County. He said, we made a lot of good brothers at Delta Z. I said, no, we didn't. He said, what you mean? I said, we made a lot of good friends, but we didn't make a lot of good brothers. I said, so I tell you, this is how you know. I want you to pull both your hands out and count on your fingers how many Delta Z brothers definitely are active in a chapter and paying dues.
Wow, that's powerful.
Tell me, count them out. I said, once you get past me, you, Polly, and Huckabee, we're done. Where are all the brothers in the chapter? Okay? So no, a good brother is a dues paying brother. He's on a committee. He's doing the work of Alpha. He should at least be able to tell you 2 of the 4 national programs we have. He should know that all graduate chapters end in Lambda.
Yeah.
But they don't know.
Sure.
Right? And so I'll tell them in a minute, don't call me talking about Alpha until you are dues paying brother and active in a chapter.
Quite a challenge.
You can call me and talk about the game last night and everything else, but I don't want to hear about how many butts you kicked when we were on campus. I don't want to hear about the girlfriends you had because you went to this ball and that ball. What are you doing for the frat now in 2023? When you can tell me that, you and I can talk out.
That is the ultimate test. And Brother Shepherd, you have you have been an exemplar of that in terms of being active in the fraternity since 1968. I'm sorry, 1969.
I went over. I started pledging in '69. I went over in '69. It just was a long time. And
Sure.
you know, back then, if they saw you in the summertime, you were still online.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
If the big brother saw you in the summertime, you were still online and subject to any kind of abuse they felt like dishing out.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you'd be kind of low key in the summer. But I was so busy with my cookware and China stuff, I didn't have. And nobody saw me because I was working night and day.
Sure.
And that was a great time. Actually, my brother came out of the service. Remember, I was going to go in and follow him. He came out of the service and he said, "So what is this I hear you doing?" I said, "Man, this is the greatest thing. I'm selling these pans and I'm going blah blah blah." I'm telling him. And his first thing was, "You can't make any money doing that." So that Friday, I came home and I showed him my check stub.
Was he with you on Monday selling?
He went to work with me on Monday.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
And when I went back to college, he became the #1 guy in the company.
Well, he was only #1 because you weren't selling.
Yeah. Well, when I got back out, you know, I rightfully took my place at the top of the plate. You know?
Very nice. Well, listen, Brother Shepherd, we have thoroughly enjoyed hearing your story. And we're going to be doing a couple things. One is we're going to post this on the chapter's YouTube channel so that all the brothers will have an opportunity
We have a YouTube channel?
We have a YouTube channel.
And you'll be on it.
Yep, you'll be on it in perpetuity. And the other thing we'll do is we will be writing an article summarizing this interview, as well as amplifying some of the things that you've talked about. And we'll be sending that to you for your review and edit.
Yeah,
and that
I saw the one you did on Brother Lou.
Yeah, Brother Baker. Yeah, so we'll do one just like that on you, with the goal of it will be published in the February issue. So again, I want to thank you for your time this evening. You absolutely are an exemplar. You are what the Jewels had in mind when they thought about an alpha man. And so we want to thank you for your service and all you've done, and you've blazed the path for younger brothers in the fraternity like Brother Brown and I. So thank you again for your time this evening.
Yeah, I was excited to see Brother Brown the first meeting I went to, and he was in there. He didn't know I knew him, but I was excited to see him there.
Well, he insisted he wanted to interview you, and so I'm glad that he had the opportunity to do so.
It was an honor.
I'm glad you guys interrupted my basketball game.
There you go. That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Brother Shepherd.
Okay, you all have a good evening.
Take care.
All right, see you now.